together. We went out for weekends and everything. Ruby and I and a friend of Ruby's were rooming in one room. I don't think Irving was there that weekend. It was Ruby and I and a friend of his, Phil something or other. And there were girls in the next room. So when Saturday night arrived, Ruby knocked on the door and he'd say, on the wall of the next room, and he'd say, next door, Cass, earrings tonight, earrings tonight. Now that's real humor. That's real fun.
What do you say, evenings?
Earrings.
Oh.
Earrings tonight, next door, you know, in Jewish. Earrings tonight.
The ones next door. Who is Feta Zussel? My mother used to reminisce about these Friday nights. She said Feta Zussel would come carrying oranges.
He was an uncle. Feta's uncle.
I know, but I mean, how
he was
an
old man with a long beard. I don't remember how he was related, but I remember him. He had a beard down to here.
A Mumme Grunje.
Do you remember Feta Zussel?
You don't remember Feta Zussel?
I remember him, but I can't add anything about him.
Do you remember
Your mother knew him.
Now, Ida might remember what about the history of the actual family dwellings? Like, what was the first place that the family
Well, we moved every year. You know, you got a concession for a month, so you took the concession and moved.
My mother said they started off on the Lower East Side.
Yeah, I was born on the East Side.
Can you tell us about that apartment?
Well,
I don't remember too much of the Lower East Side.
And we used to move to same in the area.
We lived to Washington Avenue.
Well, do you remember that first apartment on the Lower East Side?
No, I don't remember. I was about 3 years old. I remembered Louis' Shiva period.
That was on the Lower East Side.
That was on the Lower East Side.
And then they moved to the Bronx shortly after.
Moved to the East Bronx, and then we got rich, and we moved to the West Bronx. You know.
Then we moved to the West Bronx.
It was really something. It really was. Although I imagine every family must have a similar history, or a similar history of sorts.
Where was the...
That isn't exclusive with the Epsteins.
At what point did the Lewis Morris come into the picture?
They got an apartment.
Oh, we had to have an apartment for all of us to live in. We were a big crew.
And is that where the Friday nights were happening?
Yeah, probably.
There, that's where the Friday nights were happening.
In the Lewis Morris?
In fact, my sister Lee bought a baby grand piano. And she bought the Spanish shawl to cover it. You know, she was fancy.
Some gal.
She really was. Well, I wrote her obit, and I called it to Charlie. And Charlie read it, I understand.
Yes. At the funeral. We got Murray's words in there, yeah.
She was something.
Murray.
What?
How about the car that Lee drove?
Oh, yes.
And Sal had to be a chauffeur.
Yes. Lee bought an old Pierce Arrow.
That's right.
Where there was a separate space for the chauffeur. And there was, it was called a cabriolet or something like that in the back. And there was a speaker in the back for Lee to give instructions to the chauffeur. And Lee was nearsighted, like many of us were. She was the first one to wear contact lenses.
Yes, I remember that.
And that was in the 30s. She wore contact lenses. And Solly was the chauffeur for Lee's Pierce Arrow. I don't know what made her buy the car, but she wanted a car. She couldn't drive then. Oh, that car was something. In fact, I always wanted to get out of New York, so once they took me for a ride to Mount Kisco. And I said, wow, I'm not in New York City. I'm out of the city. I'm in Mount Kisco. He was such a big deal in those years.
What about the famous trip with Violet, I believe, to Florida? Wasn't that in that Pierce Arrow?
No.
That I don't know.
Mom always talked about it.
Two separate cars.
I see. Were there any highlights that you remember of that trip?
You saw it. Me in the bathing.
Oh, all right. That was the famous trip.
You in the what?
The bathing.
Oh,
Murray, do you remember the incident? Murray?
yeah.
Murray?
I'm listening.
The fact. The incident when Lee and I think Ray, Lee had a toothache, and they were driving. They were up in the. They went to the horse races.
Yeah.
And remember, Lee had a toothache, and they stopped at a gas station.
I don't remember
Come here and
that.
tell it. Frida.
I don't remember that. No, I don't.
And they were driving
Well,
around.
no one said anything about Ray. No one said any good stories about her.
Yeah, are there any Ray
Wait a
stories?
minute, where's Artie? Artie,
Oh, Artie.
come tell the Ray story.
Artie, come.
Come on.
Ray, Artie, that's fantastic. Come on. Artie, now is the
Tell the
time.
ghost story.
Artie, please. What's the matter?
Charlie.
No, I'm all right there. I'm feeling a little
This morning
better.
you just told it. Huh?
What's about Ray? You know Ray had stories.
I don't know.
No, Artie has a wonderful story about Ray, which
All we know is Ray was married at the age of 16.
Yeah.
She had a baby at the age of 17, or something like
How many
that.
months apart was the
Or
marriage?
16 and a half. And you're one of the products of that
That's
event.
why I'm curious. I've heard such things.
Well, I want to tell you, Ray's husband, your grandfather, Sam, he was crazy about her. Boy, he was nuts about her. And it changed.
how does she happen to get married so young?
Because she slept with
Well, Sam wouldn't let her go. Sam was really nuts about
I
her.
see, I see.
You see, your grandfather was the son of the builder of the public theater, the Jewish theater. It was a Jewish theater in those days. Nathan Schulman. And Sam was
He owned
Nathan
5
Schulman's
theaters, didn't he?
son.
Didn't he own 5 theaters?
I don't know, but there was a tie-in between Benny and the Labritsky's. Violet's heir. And there was a tie-in. That was how your grandfather met your grandmother, through that business.
You know what we're forgetting? The whole Yiddish
his
theater
mother?
connection with Fanny.
Oh, I didn't forget it. I talked about it last night.
Well, but we don't have it on. We haven't recorded
his
it.
mother.
Violet,
His mother.
Rita.
come on.
Rita
Violet.
has 3 gorgeous sons. He's one of them. You are,
Violet,
Robbie.
come on
You
in,
are
please.
gorgeous. Robbie, Rennie, and
Let's grab a
and
chair.
Richard.
Now, look, I know.
I don't know your brothers at all. I didn't know you until
Let me
today.
start with a question. My mama told me that she and Ray used to have twin sister acts, and they would sing and do things.
Yes, they would
Where
sing.
would they do this? I mean, what's the
The
story?
living room.
In the living
In the
room.
living room. They never made it to Broadway. Mom told me she had Broadway offers, which she had to refuse because she was making too much money with Tilton and Keeler. I know she dated Milton
She
Berle.
did?
She dated Milton
I didn't
Berle.
know she had Broadway offers.
That's what she said. And
Who?
my mother. She had 1 or 2 dates with Milton Berle.
Who's
She
your
says all she
mother?
remembers is he had dirty fingernails.
Your mother is who?
Lee.
Lee had 1 or 2 dates with who?
Milton Berle.
Oh,
And she
With
dated
Milton Berle, yeah.
Danny. She dated Jerry Lewis's father, Danny Lewis, in the
Her own
Catskills.
fault.
So apparently she used to hang out in the Catskills and was on the edge of the show business crowd.
Well,
I don't know.
You don't know about that.
when Lee used to entertain, I'll tell you when she entertained. Milton,
Ladies, Rita. I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Lee's husband, was one of the foremost bridge players in the world. And he would go on cruises and taking his wife, teaching bridge and getting paid for it. And he went all over the world. And Lee would be part of the entertainment. She would sing. In
Into
fact,
her
we saw
70s.
some films.
No, into her 70s,
Of your mother
she
singing.
performed on shipboard with the ship with the ship orchestra. Absolutely. So let's hear about Fanny. I mean, our major Yiddish theater collection. Thank
Collection,
you.
thank
Connection. Connection is Fanny Lubritsky, Violet's mother.
She came from a theatrical family. My mother was born in London. No, see, I lie for her just like she would like. She's born in Warsaw. But if you asked her, she said she was born in London.
That's
She
funny.
was raised there, and I was always told that she had a brother who died, who was the secretary to the Prince of Wales. I don't know which one, but that's the story. Anyway, my grandfather on that side was a director in the Yiddish theater, and he traveled all over the world. When I was at NYU and I had a WPA dramatic teacher, he was excited to find out I was Isaac Yunkel's grandchild. My mother started, and her sister Golda and Davy, and probably Bonnie, in the theater practically at birth. In those days, there were lots of children's parts, and so they started there. Let's see. I believe that she carried me on the stage for 8 months. A month later, I was born. I have been told by many a Yiddish actor how they diapered me. That,
That's
which
funny.
only means that I was backstage a lot, never on stage. The Yiddish theater, as most of you know, was very good for a number of years, and then it started dying out, which was very upsetting to my mother. However, when she came out to San Francisco in her 60s, she began to do commercials. And some of you may have seen some that she did. There was also an actor's workshop there, and at 80, they called her, and she did several plays with the actors' workshop. Mother was full of arthritis, but when she played at Hadrian and had to kowtow and bow down, no trouble. She did it perfectly. And she died at 87, still performing, but not on the stage.
What year was that?
12 years ago.
Today is 91, so.
I have a description from my mother of your great-grandfather's grandfather? Schulman's.
Nathan
Of Schulman's incredible mansion in Brooklyn. Were you there? There were apparently garages for 7 cars and...
It was the Rupert, the brewery people sold it.
What was it, Rita?
Rupert House.
Rupert Brewery.
Yeah,
Would you
they
like,
owned it.
Rita, would you like to get in and...
Come say a few words about it.
Yeah, I'll get up.
No,
No, stay.
I'll
Rita,
move, she'll come in.
Get in, you're in the... Just,
Right.
This mansion I was
Mom,
told about
get down
too,
just a little bit more. There you go.
but I don't know anything except what I was told about it. I know that it was owned by the Rupert people who owned
What was owned?
the brewery, the house, the mansion. And I was told many stories about it as well, that they had bought it from them. And they had it for quite a few years. When my mother first got married, she lived in that mansion with my father. But I don't know much more about it than that.
I see.
Your descriptions probably are more vivid than mine.
Well, I think I might even have it recorded somewhere on audio cassette, but I believe she said there were garages for 7 cars.
And they had them.
And they had them. They had
Yeah.
the 7 cars.
And I remember one thing.